Hello, everybody, and welcome to Matrix Live Season 3, Episode 23, I believe, where I'm joined by Mr. Bruno and Ryan. Hello, guys.
Hello.
We thought it would be a good idea to basically pounce on Bruno whilst he's in the country because he operates on a curious helical orbit, somewhat like that of a comet, and is over every couple of months from the depths of Berlin. And in fact, we've done one of these before when last time you were over, I
We
think.
did, yeah.
What were we talking about?
About the redesign.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So in these curious post-redesign world, there's another project which a lot of folks have been working on, sometimes with the kind of sound of burning in the background, thanks to security stuff we spoke about last time. But progress has still been made, and this is on finally adding aggregations, as we call it, to Matrix. So specifically edits and reactions, and in future threading. And we thought it made sense to go and talk about it probably more from the front end side. I can try to channel my inner Eric and talk about the back end side a bit too. And basically, yeah, get an idea of where things are at and what people should expect, and to make sure that people know that super secret they can turn this all on in labs on Right Web and start playing with it right now. But I don't know, who wants to go first and say where we're at on the respective bits of it?
Right. I've been working on editing messages, which is a replace aggregation, more like a max in SQL. Yeah, it's sort of working. As part of this, we've written a new composer that we sort of are trying out. It's working well.
This is our third iteration of
Yeah.
composers. So it's in fact fourth. So we started off with a text area, which had time complete support and worked relatively well. Then we enthusiastically replaced it with Draft as part of Aviral Dasgupta's GSOC project in 2016. Then I replaced it with Slate, or more accurately, I started replacing it with Slate and then threw it over the wall to a series of unfortunate people who got to finish it. And Slate is great and all, but it doesn't have IME support. It doesn't have any screen reader support, Travis discovered last night. And it is very heavy, and lots of people have complained about it lagging. Not necessarily Slate's fault, but if there is lots of JavaScript going on, heaven forbid, elsewhere, it means that the composer is one of the first things to lag. So tell us about the new composer.
Right. Yeah, it uses a bit of a different approach, tries to rely less on the fact that you're typing on a keyboard and just on the input event, which hopefully makes it work better with IME, international input, and it seems to work well.
Hopefully more people will be able to actually write messages in their own languages.
That's important.
I completely forgotten that Tom, who's looks after the organisation around Riot as a whole, has got Chinese skills, and so fired up his Pinion IME keyboard on Bruno's thing and was starting to type lots of ni hao and everything else in between, and coming up with interesting failure modes already. Admittedly, it's more than we have on Slate, but it's still, I think, a little bit of refinement to be had.
At least on Linux, ni hao worked.
I did. Okay, well, it's Apple trying to be too intelligent. Cool. So what about reactions?
Right, so we've started to add reactions, like the ability to react with a few different emoji. Right now there's just a few sort of primary types that are enabled, but yeah, I mean, you can effectively react to any message if you enable that labs feature. And yeah, you can sort of vote up or increment existing reactions that other people have added. You can also see who has reacted. Yeah, but just sort of the start of where we want to head with reactions, and eventually we'll be adding, additional emoji with it through a larger emoji picker. But it's a good first start.
So I mean, we should point out that both the edits and the reaction stuff was kind of the first phase of a multi-phase project. Phase one is due to land on May the 20th, which is Monday. So here we are, basically at the end of phase one, and almost everything has come together for it. So it's not just Riot Web where Ryan and Bruno have been hacking, but also on iOS there's been loads of work to get reactions in place, and also on Android, Riot 10 or Riot X, or however you pronounce it, has been implementing them too. And in fact, I think they might be ahead of us because I saw that the Lair had put custom emoji in there already. So there's now full custom emoji picking in Riot X as well as normal reactions. And it's a bit controversial because we're consciously not doing any of this on Riot Android. So we are only implementing aggregations on the new Android SDK in Kotlin and the new Riot app there. So apologies if you're hoping to play with it on your current Riot Android right now. Instead, we're going to try to get Riot X as quickly as possible so that people can start playing with it there. And on iOS, it's basically merging as we speak, I think, to develop on GitHub, and there should be test flight releases where people can play with it on Monday. Now, a weird thing about this is that we started off by doing a massive spec piece, which admittedly isn't quite finished, but me and Eric sitting down trying to work out what the server-side API should look like for this. And yet it seems that the Riot Web team has managed to implement a lot of this without even using the Synapse branch, which implements the APIs. So who wants to try to explain how this has happened?
I'll give it a try, I guess. I mean, when I first saw the spec and it looked like the event formats were kind of coming together, it just sort of seemed like the simplest thing to do would be able to just use existing send APIs and sort of receive the events down the timeline and kind of do most of that client side, which just helped us move a bit more quickly without having to wait for backend support to go live somewhere or whatever to test things out. So at the moment, at least in Riot Web, it is all happening client side, and we're just holding on to the reactions and edits and things as they come down the timeline and sort of stuffing those away to the side out of the timeline where the messages normally show up, and then if you get the original event that those things target, then we sort of offer those up to the UI. So,
well, sort of the fastest way to move forward, all working in parallel as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of ironic though because it works pretty well. From a kind of day-to-day thing, it's suspiciously good. But I guess the problem is that when you edit an event, you get the original event coming down the sync as well as the edits, whether you want it or not. And
that will work, but like things like search, things that we want to do server side, those won't fully work now. We're basically doing on the client what the server would do, redacting or chaining the event in the same way.
Also, permalinks are going to break, presumably for both. That if we currently permalink to an older message, we're not going to automatically get all the associated reactions or indeed necessarily the newest version of the message.
You would have had to have backfilled the entire timeline in between the latest events and the original one.
So this is a bit of a weird thing that superficially it feels like it's working great even on default Synapse, but then you have this whole fleet of edge cases for search results, permalinking, gappy syncs, potentially initial syncs in terms of seeing the current state. Because basically the server has to aggregate up the associated reactions or find the most recent message. And in fact, you can kind of think of the three classes of relations which we've ended up with as reactions, a kind of it's basically a count operation in SQL terms.
Or a group by.
Yeah, count with a group by. So the server aggregates up, hey, you've got 5 thumbs up and 4 thumbs down or whatever. Then on the edit side, as you said, it's max. And on replies, not that we've switched replies over to it yet, but for replies and threading, it's almost a array underscore ag for the SQL dialects, which allow you to aggregate everything into an array. And each one needs to have its own pagination APIs because you don't want to be flooded with millions of likes just because you download a message. Likewise for threading, and also for edits, you want to be able to see the history of your edits. And so it turns out that there is a surprisingly large amount of complexity on the server side, other than the fact that you can also ignore it and have something that works relatively well. So a bit of a weird project, but people can play with it right now, right?
Yep. 2 labs flags, 1 for each feature.
Only undeveloped for now, but
But so if you're using Riot.im/develop, go into labs, click the two magic buttons. You might need to force refresh because the caching's a bit wobbly since we rebuilt everything, which is my fault. Sorry. I can very clearly remember thinking, am I going to bother to set up all the expiry headers on this at 4 o'clock in the morning whilst rebuilding it? And I didn't, and here we are, reaping the whirlwind. Sorry about that. We'll get it fixed. Either way, force refresh. You should have the lab settings up on RightWeb, and you can start playing with it, and you'll discover an entire hidden world. It's a bit like the Upside Down in Stranger Things, where everybody is going and graffitiing increasingly inappropriate emoji on pretty much every single message. What else can we say about this?
We can talk a bit about the encrypted rooms
Oh,
that
yeah.
handle the reactions and things like that. I mean, effectively, our current plan, I guess, with this is to try to encrypt the key or the emoji value that you're trying to send with the reaction using the same key that was used to send the message that it targets. So basically, the same set of people who can view the message you're reacting to would be able to view all the reactions associated with it. Once this work is done, those reactions would all be encrypted, so you wouldn't be able to see in clear text what the reactions were at all. But then the same people who can view the message can see all the reactions. So.
I think that's probably about as good as we can get
Yep.
there. On the Federation side of things, we're slightly cutting corners in that we are basically, for now, defining recovery after a Federation outage for basically, if there's a big gap in Federation and a whole bunch of reactions happened, there isn't currently a way to catch up on what you missed unless you explicitly go and backfill all of the history, which is something we'll see how much of a problem that really is in reality. I guess another thing to mention is that the aggregations work is heavily inspired by PR that Pick put together back in 2016. So Pick was a contributor to the Matrix community, very prolific back in the day, and unfortunately passed away in 2017, if I remember correctly. And the poor guy went and gave us an entire PR for implementing all of this. In fact, it went far beyond, so that's what we've ended up doing here, in that it allowed you to define an arbitrary schema for aggregations of any kind. Now, I can see why he did it, and we argued about it at the time, and he in fact even created an MSC or kind of pre-MSC matrix spec change draft for how this would work. It's a bit weird though, because nowhere else do we allow users to define schemas of events. The schemas of the events are the spec, and it's not like we provide kind of bring your own schema to define new stuff. Instead, it's much more of a duck typing thing where you just start wanging in new shapes of objects, and if we think it's a good idea, then you contribute it to the spec. So there's a little bit of a philosophical gap on that. But it also was kind of cool because it did provide kind of arbitrary aggregation functions that looked a lot more like SQL. Either way, the end result is that the APIs look a little bit different, and you use a m.annotation is the relation type you use if you're doing a reaction. m.replace is what you use on the edit, and m.reference, almost got it right, is what you would use if you are doing a thread or a reply going forwards. And they all get bundled up into the m.relates to
m.relations.
Oh, have we switched it to m.relations? No, hang on. When you receive it, so we should say that when you're sending it, you put it in an m.relates to mixin, but when you receive it, if the server has bundled it up together, assuming you do actually use the right server, then you get it aggregated into the event, and yes, it's put in a unsigned m.relations thing. So relates to is basically on the subject, and relations is on the object-ish. So yeah, it's a thing. And it's been a bit of a sprint, honestly, to get it together over the last couple of weeks. But there's been a massive team effort between NAD doing all of the UX for it, which is looking very sexy. And the guys in France who have been hacking away frantically on iOS and Android to pull it together, as well as Eric going and doing all the spec work and the back-end stuff. But hopefully it's basically the biggest new feature that we've actually managed to land in Matrix in ages, which is always nice.
It's amazing how now as we.
Yeah, when things actually come together, even when the rest of the company's on fire, it's fun to be able to land new stuff. And so that was phase one of what we've got so far. What's in phase two?
Polish?
Nah, it's more than polish. On the edits, things like keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah.
So hitting the up button to go through your history to edit it, like you can in Slack, although we obviously came up with this entirely independently. What else? On edits. It's a lot more on reactions, to be honest. I guess the edits is probably just making the composer work reliably and swapping out the main composer for it at this rate.
Yeah, potentially.
I'm still yet to find anybody who likes the rich text editor or actually uses it for rich text rather than Markdown.
Yeah, I guess with reactions, we're going to change up kind of the way the choices are displayed, as well as I think get into the emoji picker as well. Yeah, I can't remember exactly which.
Actually, that's a good point. Yeah, we should spell out that the UI is actually about to change already for how you pick your reactions, because we have an ulterior secret evil plan that we're not telling anybody about, which is to go and use some of the emoji to try to build up a map within a room of the sort of interactions between people, such that if somebody turns up and is a spammer and everybody immediately downvotes them, then you can use the reaction data to start graying them out, a bit like you would in Reddit or Hacker News. And at first we thought we might make this quite obvious with a literally, what's the right word, sort of antagonistic pair of thumbs up and thumbs down, or this is going to be a lot harder to. Yeah, can we do an antagonistic pair, Bruno? Of the happy versus the. There you go. So the idea is that you as a user would have to say, do I either agree or disagree, or and it's one or the other choice. It's literally a toggle. And likewise, am I happy or am I sad about this? It's a bit complicated relative to the Facebook brain dead mentality of like, or even the GitHub mentality of I've got 6 different options and I'm going to pick the rocket because I like rockets. So we're basically converging more towards the GitHub model now, and so there will be an iteration probably before this even lands in master with a slightly different UI picking stuff. Also, custom emoji for well, first of all, the full range of emoji we need to get in there.
Yep.
Using what, Emoji Mart or something?
Yes, Emoji Mart. Yeah, there's a UI component there that we can just an open source component we can use that gives you a nice picker to sort of filter through and choose different categories of emoji.
Yeah. So you'll still have like 4 or 5 default ones available to you. And by the way, those will still be used for nefarious purposes to try to get rid of spammers, but we won't be making it quite so in your face. And custom emoji full stop. Because it sucks that we've got this far without mainstream custom emoji. There are branches of Riot done by the Brony community to go and put Rainbow Dash and all your other ponies into your messages as custom emoji, because catastrophically my little pony has yet to make it into Unicode. Probably Unicode 13 will be there, but we need to pull that into mainline matrix because it's really fun. So everybody loves it, and Slack and and Discord for that matter. And it's a bit of a bummer that we don't have it.
It's already been pretty fun to see people just with the emoji reactions. I mean, it's really like changed, I think, the way people communicate to things. And
I never anticipated the level of social change that would come out of emoji reactions. It like reduces the amount of vertical screen real estate by a factor of 4 in terms of people no longer saying, "Oh yeah, me too, plus one." So yeah, it's going to be super interesting to see how that happens. We need to get the bridges talking them too, especially when we bridge through to other platforms. Clearly, we should make the IRC bridge do fallback representation of reactions, so every single thumbs up goes into IRC as a really obnoxious matrix, and chuck an emoji of a thumbs up in.
I think it'll be interesting to see, since we're looking at screen reader support as well, like how do you do that to read out the existing reactions, right? And like as numbers increment, like what happens there?
So I think our screen reader support was already pretty crap, and during the redesign it got worse. And then with the addition of the reactions, when Travis did a review of it last night, the fact that every single emoji was being constantly read out, so it was like, Matthew sent message at this timestamp, happy face, unhappy face, thumbs up, thumbs down. So yeah, we're gonna have to fix that. I'm sure there was some other fun stuff on the reactions. What else was there? I guess we can even bring up the Tom's dashboard of doom and see what else is in. I'm never going to be able to find it, am I?
Look for feature.
Feature? Is that what I'm looking for? It's giving me Game of Thrones spoilers. It's probably not what we're meant to be looking for right now. Oh god, perhaps I can't find it. Might be in Firefox. Oh yeah, there we go. It's in Firefox. So phase 2 on the editing. Oh yeah, viewing edit history. We're going to have nice diffs, aren't we? It's going to be really sexy diffs.
Right.
Like you get on GitHub, like inline diffs to see what people edited. Hover actions on each edit, times of edits, backend support. Yeah, I mean, we've basically gone through all of that.
Yeah, this is for editing.
Yeah, and is there an equivalent one for...
you can just edit the URL, change feature message editing to reactions. Maybe.
There we go. So we've got, the emoji picker, paginating is a big deal. Errors when sending is quite a nasty one. We need to be able to redact them as moderators. Stopping users from being able to send more than one. Have we done that? Did Eric do that server side?
I'm not sure if he has. No, I'm not sure.
That's quite a big one that we've not been remembering. As fun as it would be to go and give yourself 400 thumbs ups. Please don't do anyone. I'm looking at you, dev boners. Let me put that in my to-do list. And urgently limit emojis per person. No emoji for you. One emoji for you per type. Right, what else? That's basically it, I think. We've mentioned everything else. Exciting. So probably a couple more weeks to get the remaining phase 2 stuff, but the phase 1 stuff should be usable. Thing is, we're not going to be able to unleash reactions until Android catches up. So we're not sure what we're going to do about this, whether Riot X is going to be far enough along that we can start getting people to install it and use it, or whether we just launch it on iOS and web and say, hey guys, this is kind of slightly early and Android will catch up real soon now. It would be so nice to do it properly. Especially as for the first time ever, the feature has landed at the same time on web and mobile.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. And in fact, even the front end landed before the back end, which is also almost unheard of. So it's a fun project. Can I talk about emoji fonts briefly? These guys you'll see them go and hang themselves in frustration and despair. But basically, we're also going to get rid of Emoji 1, which is the SVG-based emojis that we use on Riot Web, which, first of all, have licensing problems. Anything, I think, after Unicode 9 or 10 or something is no longer usable for free software unless you pay them lots and lots of money. Secondarily, it's a pain in the ass to implement because every time you send a message, Riot Web goes through looking for things with a regex that might be emoji and then swaps a SVG image badong over the top, which is fiddly and makes the DOM more complicated. It makes React more complicated. And in fact, when we profile our React doing stuff, I think it slows things down almost by a factor of 2 because it's got so many more. Every time you put any text on the screen, it has to faff around going and through this dance and abstracting away the emoji representations, etc. So last night I went on a mission to try to find a way to kill Emoji 1, and it turns out the Twitter have a replacement for Emoji 1 called Twimoji, which is the Twitter emoji character set. And they publish that as SVG, but Mozilla, very nicely, have gone and taken that set of SVG, and there's about 3,000 of them now, and written this really funky script which basically deduplicates all of the components of the SVGs, so that if you've got a bunch of smiley faces and they all have the same yellow base smiley face, it gets completely factored out. And then it squanches them all into a web font color web font, and there are 4 different types of color web fonts today. The one they've gone for is the Microsoft flavored one, which is COLR format / CPAL or something. And it's really cool in that what it does is basically do normal true type, but you're allowed to build up each glyph with a series of layers. Each layer has a different color. So it's actually very simple to render because it's basically just taking the same font stuff you already have and you just keep redoing it. A bit like an old dot matrix printer going through with a different ribbon every time, at the risk of showing my age. And what are we talking about here? The cool thing is that Mozilla shipped this in Firefox as a fallback for emoji on platforms which might not have the most recent emoji, like most of Linux, quite a lot of Windows, etc. And so they maintained this, and it compresses down to 300k of web font WAF2 format, which is nuts, frankly. And so the idea is that we'll shift over to using that, certainly on Riot Web, almost certainly on Riot Android, probably not on Riot iOS. And then we shall have completely consistent, almost emoji across the board, just via fonts, without any SVGs, without any horrible DOM, React, JavaScript crap going on. And it looks as if it could work really well, other than the fact that it wasn't working when I tried it last night. And it's possible that I might have gone on a mission to work out why this was, and it turns out that one of the layers is missing the metrics required to be rendered by macOS on Chrome and Firefox. But the good news is that there is now a PR out against that, which hopefully fixes it, which might even have been accepted by now. So, long story short, new type of emoji. It's going to look like Twitter. It's going to be consistent. It's going to be much more performance, and it should speed up Riot Web by a factor of somewhere between 1.5 and 2.
Should also load much more quickly with less.
Yeah.
A smaller bundle to download. So.
Yeah, and we can cache the hell out of it. I'm sure you've seen horrible bugs already. In fact, on Firefox right now, if you try to send an emoji, you get both the native emoji and the emoji one SVG side by side. Because something broke in the depths of Slate, and it's this constant fragile horror that we are escaping. And it will also mean that the reactions are consistent, which is important because if you're using happy face and unhappy Bruno as ways to kind of vote with your feet on your emotional response to something, you want the emoji to look similar. You don't want somebody to be on a Samsung thing that is constantly a bit neurotic versus an Apple thing, which is giving a different vibe. Sorry for monologuing, guys. What else should we talk about, if anything?
I think that covers it.
Cool. Well, hopefully people will play with reactions and labs. This is a sneak preview, we should say. Obviously, it's not properly out. We haven't blogged about it. In fact, the spec for it is still in need of some love, which I'll try to give it. But
people are definitely discovering it, though. I mean, I've seen lots of
random
comments all over the place from people like.
Yeah, there are a lot of bots out there already which automatically go and put rings and brains and other emoji on every message, which is a little bit random, just saying. But it's cool. Well, congrats on putting it together on the Riot Web side, and thanks.
It's been nice to work together with all the teams on the different platforms. And
I love you too, man.
Yeah.
No, it's been fun. Cool. Well, thanks everybody for flying Matrix and listening to us waffle on. Thank you, Bruno. Thanks, Ryan, for getting dragged into this. Thanks, Delph and Accenture. And see you all soon. Bye.
Bye.